Hi everybody and welcome to my channel. In this episode I'm going to be talking about Charles Bronson. So Charles Bronson has got an upcoming parole hearing which is being held on the 6th of March. And Charles Bronson was just featured in a documentary which was on the last 2 nights, and it was called Fit for Release, and it's all about his upcoming parole hearing. But before I get started, just like to say a massive thank you to all my subscribers for your continuing support. I'm over 26,000 at the minute and it's going up really well. So again, thank you all for subscribing. But again, 80% of my viewers are still not subscribed to my channel. So if you are one of those, please go down and click the subscribe button and help my channel grow. So Charles Bronson has spent 48 years in prison. Most of these has been in high security prisons, been on the units, and he's had, I believe, 7 parole hearings and he's been knocked back on each and every one of them. But Charles Bronson is currently in HMP Woodhill on the Cat A unit. So Charles Bronson's parole hearing is actually going to be a public parole hearing. But after watching the documentary last night myself, I don't have much faith in Charles Bronson being released. I mean, the parole board have got the power to do anything they want. If they wanted to release Charles Bronson, they can release him. If they wanted to send him to a Category D prison, they can. But my thoughts on the documentary, what I've just seen last night and the night before, I didn't have much faith in Charles Bronson getting released anyways because he's Cat A prisoner and he's on a unit and he's a lifer. So what that means is when you're a lifer, you've normally got to progress through the system. You've got to go from Category A down to Cat B, to Cat C, Cat D, then finally released. But with Charles Bronson still being in a high security unit in Woodhill as a Category A prisoner, he's got no chance of being released. And after watching the documentary, I don't know if any of you have watched it, it's called Fit for Release. It was on Channel 4 last night and the night before. Go and give it a watch and see what your thoughts on it. I've spoken to a couple of people about it and there's mixed reviews. Some people have said that they think he will be released, and people have been having debates about it. These people are actually people that have been in prison themselves, and the discussions are going on Facebook and different places. But for me, I don't think he will be released. And especially at the end when the reporter turned around to his son, George, and he said to him, would you feel comfortable with him being released, coming back and living with you? Do you feel like he poses a risk? And I think the answer that he gave was wrong. He should have turned around if he thought to himself, he wants his dad released, and if he thinks that he's not a risk, he should have turned around and said, yes, I think he's fit for release. He can come back here and I believe that he will be fine. He can live a normal life. But he answered the question by saying, if he came and got released and he come and lived with me, would I feel safe with him? And he turned around and said, I mean, I couldn't say that we could never get into an argument and he might turn around and plunge us up. Well, for me, for that statement alone, the parole board are going to be watching this documentary. The parole board will already have made their mind up before it even goes to parole because of who he is. I mean, parole boards are meant to be they are independent and they're supposed to take the prisoner's response on face values. But because it's Charles Bronson and he's a high-profile prisoner, I think they'll have made their minds up before they even go on the parole board. And if they've watched that documentary last night, when his son George come back with that comment, and they even asked George's wife, would you feel safe if he come and lived with you? And she turned around and said, I wouldn't feel safe. I wouldn't, more or less saying, I wouldn't like him living with me because I wouldn't feel safe. But if this is his own family saying this, if you went and asked that to any member of the public, a normal law-abiding citizen from the public, what would you feel if Charles Bronson come and live next door to you? they're obviously going to say I would be terrified, I don't want to live next door to me. And 99% of the public are probably going to say the same answer. But then when his sons turned around and said he wouldn't feel safe or he couldn't say for certain, nobody can say anything for certain because nothing's ever certain. But with him coming back with that answer, saying, I wouldn't feel, I don't know whether if we'd had an argument, whether or not he would plunge us up in a fit of rage or something similar like that, he said. I mean, that for me would be enough to sway the parole board to say, no, we're not releasing him. So that's my thoughts on that with what his son come back with in response. But my thoughts on Charles Bronson, what do I think? I think he's done his time, he's done way over his time, and I think he should be released. He's 70-year-old bloke, he should be given the chance to come out and live a normal life. But should he be released straight from a unit? He needs to be integrated properly. I wouldn't say release him straight from a unit, no way, because he wouldn't feel safe, he wouldn't be able to cope with it, and it would be too much for him. So they do need to do it gradually, but they could. I mean, what will happen is they'll probably give him Cat B or Cat C and then integrate him because they need to see what he's like on a wing first with other prisoners before they release him. But getting back to my point and my view, what I think, they should do it gradually where put him into a Cat C prison for maybe 6 months and then into, or even put him into a Cat D prison because they've got Cat D prisons. There's one up here called Kirk Leventon. It's more like a Cat C prison because it's fenced in, it's enclosed, you can't just walk out of it. It's more like a Cat C, Cat D, but it is a Cat D open prison. Put him in somewhere like that, leave him on the wing for 3 to 6 months, and then gradually let him out on day release. And that for me would be the best option to do with Charles Bronson because you couldn't just release him straight out to a house or somewhere like that, or even to a hostel, because it would be too much. He's stuck on this close supervision unit. And he's lived there and on different blocks and different units for the past 48 years. So letting him out would be far too much. He even said that himself on the documentary, The Voices of Long Lawton, which if you go back on my previous videos, you'll see it. I put it on about 4 or 5 months ago. Go and have a look at it. It was the clip that was shown last night on the documentary where he said he was released as a Cartier prisoner and he got picked up by his dad and he stopped off at a petrol station to use the toilets and there was loads of lads or loads of men in the toilet and he thought they were all in there waiting for him. And he said this what was it, 30 years ago, something like that. And he said then that it was too much, they shouldn't have released him as a Cartier prisoner. So if he said that back then, when he'd only done X amount of years, not near enough what he has done now, then they're definitely not going to release him from where he's at now. So everyone that's sitting there back at home who doesn't really know much about the system, who is thinking, yes, he's going to be released and he will be getting out, he's definitely not getting out. They would never release him from a Cartier unit because they just couldn't take that chance because the reason why it's so hard for the parole board as well, the decision that they've got to make, is because the world's eyes are on this. Charles Bronson, he's the most famous prisoner in the world. He's got any amount of books about him. He's got a video made of him. Everyone all over the world has heard about him. People who's been to prison, the most notorious and the most famous prisoner. So the parole board has got all of this pressure on top as well. So just say they did release him straight from the unit. He went out, he went and lived in a house, he couldn't handle the situation, something happened, he exploded. That is then on them, and they've got to think about all this before they release him. But he's also got the added pressure of Dominic Raab, because Dominic Raab at the minute, I've heard of people who went on parole boards and the parole board has granted them release, so they've said yes. But Dominic Raab, with being the Secretary of State, he has to stamp the parole dossier, everyone who's a lifer or IPP. Once you get your answer from the parole board, then the Home Secretary has to stamp it and approve it. But recently, Dominic Raab has been not approving it. He's not been stamping it. He's been saying no, and he's refusing it. So I think if he's been doing it to all of these other type of people, he's definitely going to do it to Charles Bronson, because it's on his head. He's got to stamp it and he's got to say yes. But the way he is and the way he's doing things at the minute, there's no way he'll stamp it and approve it. And that's a fact. So this is all the obstacles and this is all the things that Charles Bronson is facing at the minute. And he's done himself no justice on these documentaries. If you've seen it yourself, the way he's coming across. Also, he's thinking about, he's even said it to his son. They used to make up stories just to get it in the papers, just to, because he liked his name being in the paper, and he used to love getting the paper and seeing his face inside of it. He loves seeing himself on the telly. He loves the limelight, and that's what he's all about. But he's said a few too many things where people don't know whether he's serious or not, and he's done himself no favours, in my opinion. He should have been progressing well before his parole hearing. He could have went on to try to get off the book, which is get off the cat here first of all, because that's separate from the parole board. This is all to do with the Home Office. He could have went to try and get off the book before he went for parole, then went to a category B prison, settled himself on a wing and had a year or so on the wing, then went for his parole. Then he would have had a much better chance. But now he's got to get downgraded before he even gets released. But we'll see what happens soon enough, because his parole hearing is scheduled, I think, for the 6th of March, which is in 5 days' time. And once he sits his parole hearing, it's normally, well, it's up to 21 days after to get your answer, and it's normally about 2 weeks. So we'll see what happens. There'll be plenty of it in the press, I'd imagine. So we'll keep our eyes opened, ears opened, and see what happens. Hopefully he gets a good result. I wish him luck. I do. I hope he gets a good result. A good result for me would be getting Cat D, going sitting in Cat D for a bit, then gradually getting released. But I don't even think that will happen. I think he'll probably get downgraded to Cat B, and then they'll see what he's like progressing onto a normal wing. But I'll leave it on there for now, people. I will be doing more videos on Charles Bronson soon, and I'll be keeping you updated on his parole hearing. Everything that I hear, I'll be sharing. So keep watching, people. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.